Absolutely. Here's key point 1 fast expanded into a P600-word segment, written in a seamless conversational, Esther Perel inspired style, while keeping it aligned with the overall speech. Have you ever felt a quiet nudge inside you, one so soft it almost slips past your awareness, yet so persistent it refuses to be ignored? That is the still small voice calling your attention, inviting you to pause, to notice, to listen. In the chaos of our modern lives, where notifications, deadlines, and constant stimulation demand our focus, this gentle whisper can feel almost invisible. But it is there, guiding us, hinting at a deeper wisdom that is often overlooked. It is the voice that exists beyond logic, beyond fear, beyond the surface of our daily routines. It is subtle, yes, but it is profound, and learning to recognize it is the very first step on the journey of divine listening. Most of us have grown accustomed to loud signals. We respond to alarms, to urgent emails, to the external pressures that shout for our attention, and in doing so, we often drown out the soft intimations of our own soul. Yet the whisper is persistent, it is patient. It waits not in drama, but in quiet spaces, in the pauses between thoughts, in the stillness of a morning before the world stirs. To hear it, we must first cultivate awareness, noticing the small, often overlooked signals in our emotions, our body, and our instincts. A sense of discomfort, a fleeting intuition, a sudden clarity in a complex decision. All of these are manifestations of the subtle guidance that wants to lead us toward growth, healing, and transformation. What makes this recognition so challenging is that our culture teaches us to value noise, speed, and measurable outcomes. We are trained to trust what is tangible, visible, and immediate. And yet, the most transformative guidance is rarely loud. It is quiet. It does not demand attention with urgency or fanfare. It offers itself as a gentle invitation. When we learn to attune ourselves to this voice, we begin to perceive life differently. Decisions become more aligned, relationships feel more authentic, and a sense of peace emerges even amid uncertainty. Listening, truly listening, requires humility and patience. It requires a willingness to step back from our habitual need for certainty and control and to trust something beyond what our rational mind can fully grasp. There is also a vulnerability in recognizing the whisper. To admit that there is guidance beyond ourselves is to acknowledge that we do not have all the answers. And yet, in this very vulnerability lies our strength. The whisper calls us to a deeper intimacy with our own being, to a conversation with the unseen, and to a trust in life's unfolding that defies immediate explanation. In this space, courage is not loud. It is quiet. Courage is the willingness to pause, to pay attention, and to give credence to the subtle nudges that may initially seem inconsequential but carry the seeds of profound transformation. Catherine Kuhlman emphasizes in this moment of reflection that the first step is not action but awareness. The whisper must first be recognized before it can guide. By tuning into it, even for a few minutes each day, we begin to recalibrate our perception of what is important, what matters, and what is possible. And over time, what starts as a soft murmur becomes a trusted companion, an internal compass that speaks in alignment with our highest values and deepest desires. The still small voice is patient. It does not rush. It does not demand. It waits for us to become quiet enough, attentive enough, receptive enough to notice its presence. And when we do, the journey of divine listening begins, not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with the simple, profound act of noticing. Do you want me to expand key point 2 next in the same style, keeping the flow seamless toward the full speech? Here's Terskin key point 2% expanded into a 600-word seamless segment. In the Esther Perel inspired style you requested, being present is not simply a matter of being physically in a space or going through the motions of our day. True presence is a state of awareness, a willingness to inhabit the moment fully, to allow ourselves to feel, sense, and perceive without distraction. It is in this presence that the still small voice finds its most receptive audience. Without presence, the whisper can be drowned out by the endless chatter of the mind, by worries about the past or anxieties about the future. We may catch glimpses of it, fleeting hints that something is trying to guide us. But without conscious attention, these glimpses are often lost, forgotten before they have a chance to unfold into clarity. Catherine Kuhlman reminds us that cultivating presence is an act of devotion to oneself. It is a deliberate choice to slow down, to create a space where the inner self can be heard. This may mean setting aside moments of quiet in the early morning before the world has fully stirred, or finding stillness at night when the noise of obligations has finally settled. It is not about isolation, but about creating mental and emotional space. In these pockets of calm, we become attuned to the subtle rhythms of our intuition. We notice the sensations in our body, the fleeting thoughts that arise, the emotions that whisper of deeper truths. Each sensation, each fleeting thought, becomes a doorway into a conversation with the divine within us. To cultivate presence, we must also become mindful of our habits and the patterns that fragment our attention. How often do we move through our days half-conscious, operating on autopilot, only to wonder why our decisions feel disconnected from our deepest selves? Presence is the antidote to this disconnection. It is the practice of noticing, not judging, the currents of thought, the sensations of the body, and the quiet stirrings of intuition. Even a few minutes of conscious breathing, a pause to observe our surroundings, or a mindful reflection on what we are feeling, can significantly enhance our receptivity. These moments act like tuning a musical instrument. They align us with the subtle frequencies of insight that are always present, but rarely heard amidst the noise of daily life. There is a vulnerability inherent in presence. To truly inhabit a moment is to open oneself to both clarity and discomfort. It is to acknowledge what we do not know and to embrace uncertainty without immediately seeking solutions. And yet, it is precisely in this vulnerability that the still small voice grows louder. It speaks most clearly when we are fully attentive, when we are willing to feel what is present without turning away. Presence requires patience, for the whispers of intuition are often slow to reveal themselves. They do not shout, they do not demand, they invite, and we must be willing to answer with quiet attention, with trust, and with openness. Catherine Kuhlman emphasizes that presence is also relational. Listening to the divine within is inseparable from listening to life around us, the people we interact with, the environments we inhabit, the subtle cues of our own emotions. Presence is the bridge between our internal wisdom and the external world. It allows us to act from insight rather than impulse, to respond with intentionality rather than habit, and to cultivate a deeper sense of intimacy with both ourselves and those around us. In presence, we discover that the voice guiding us is not an isolated echo, but part of a larger harmony, a conversation with the world and the divine alike. Being present is not a one-time achievement, but a practice, an ongoing commitment to notice, to feel, to attend. It is in this sustained presence that we begin to discern the patterns, the nudges, and the guidance that the still small voice offers. With each moment we allow ourselves to truly inhabit, the whisper grows stronger, more distinct, and more trustworthy. Presence, therefore, is both the vessel and the invitation, the vessel in which insight can reside and the invitation to step fully into the life that is quietly calling to us. Do you want me to send key point 3 next, in the same flowing, emotionally compelling style? Here's 10.3 Impana expanded into a 600-word seamless segment in the Esther Perel inspired style. Trusting the unseen is perhaps one of the most challenging yet transformative steps in the journey of divine listening. It asks us to release the rigid grip of certainty, to let go of the familiar desire to control every outcome, and to step into a space that is both mysterious and full of possibility. Many of us are conditioned to trust what we can measure, see, or prove. We place our faith in facts, in logic, in tangible results, and yet the still small voice does not operate on these terms. Its language is subtle, its timing unpredictable, and its guidance often arrives in ways we cannot immediately comprehend. To trust it requires courage, patience, and a willingness to embrace uncertainty as a teacher rather than a threat. Catherine Coulomb points out that trusting the unseen is not a passive act. It is an active engagement with life that demands presence, discernment, and openness. It means listening deeply to the intuitive nudges that rise within us and allowing them to influence our choices, even when the path is unclear. These nudges may appear as fleeting thoughts, subtle inclinations, or unexpected insights that challenge our habitual ways of thinking. They often contradict the logic of our minds or the expectations of those around us. And yet, it is precisely in these moments of uncertainty that the whisper of the divine can be most profound. Trusting it is a declaration of faith, not in an external force alone, but in our own ability to navigate life guided by wisdom that transcends the surface of reality. The difficulty in this trust often stems from fear. Fear tempts us to seek immediate evidence, to wait for external confirmation, or to dismiss intuition as coincidence. Yet when we consistently rely on these external validations, we diminish our capacity to hear the inner voice. The unseen cannot always be quantified, yet it carries a resonance that touches the depths of our being. It asks us to surrender, not to abandon responsibility, but to act with the awareness that guidance often precedes clarity. To trust it is to recognize that life is not a linear sequence of cause and effect, but a dynamic, interconnected flow in which intuition, timing, and subtle insight converge to create profound outcomes. Catherine Coulomb emphasizes that trust in the unseen also requires a delicate balance between listening and discernment. The inner voice is not always loud, and it is not always immediately clear. At times, it may challenge us, push us beyond comfort zones, or confront us with truths we would rather avoid. But trusting it means committing to a dialogue rather than a monologue, engaging with it through reflection, action, and observation. Over time, this practice builds confidence. We begin to recognize patterns, to understand the tone and rhythm of our own intuition, and to integrate its guidance into the flow of everyday life. The unseen becomes less intimidating and more like a faithful companion, quietly guiding us toward alignment, clarity, and growth. This trust also reshapes our relationship with uncertainty itself. Life is inherently unpredictable, yet the still small voice offers a kind of anchor, a subtle compass that steers us even when the map is not visible. By embracing the unknown with openness, we cultivate resilience, creativity, and a sense of curiosity. We begin to see challenges not as obstacles, but as invitations to listen more deeply, to refine our perception, and to act in alignment with our highest values. The unseen becomes a source of insight rather than anxiety, a quiet presence that reassures us even when the path ahead is not fully illuminated. Catherine Coulomb reminds us that the journey of trusting the unseen is ongoing. It is not a single decision, but a daily commitment to honor the quiet guidance that arises within us. Each time we choose to trust, even in the smallest of moments, we strengthen our connection to this inner wisdom, and we open ourselves to possibilities that logic alone could never reveal. The unseen is patient, persistent, and always present. waiting for us to answer with courage and faith. Do you want me to expand key point 4 next in the same flowing, emotionally rich style to continue the full speech? Here's key point 4 presented expanded into a 600-word seamless segment in the Esther Perel inspired style, keeping alignment with the overall speech. Discerning guidance from noise is a subtle yet essential part of learning to listen to the still small voice. In a world saturated with messages, opinions, and endless distractions, it is easy to mistake our own fears, desires, or societal pressures for genuine insight. The whispers of intuition are delicate, and without careful attention, they can be drowned out by the clamor of our minds or the expectations of others. Learning to distinguish the divine nudges from the background noise requires patience, clarity, and a refined sense of awareness. It is a practice that unfolds over time, a dance between trust and discernment, between surrender and mindful observation. Catherine Coulomb highlights that the first step in this discernment is noticing the quality of the voice itself. True guidance feels different from the impulsive reactions or fleeting thoughts that arise from ego, fear, or habit. It carries a sense of calm, even if it challenges us, a subtle insistence that invites reflection rather than demanding immediate action. It does not rely on anxiety, urgency, or dramatics to compel us. In contrast, the noise of our mind often comes wrapped in tension, in the clamor of shoulds or the pull of unresolved desires. By learning to tune into the tone, rhythm, and subtle emotional resonance of our inner voice, we begin to separate authentic guidance from the chatter that clutters our consciousness. Another aspect of discernment is observing the outcomes of our impulses over time. The small voice, when followed, tends to lead toward alignment, clarity, and integrity. Decisions prompted by ego, fear, or societal expectations often create friction, confusion, or regret. By paying attention to these patterns, we train ourselves to recognize the difference between guidance that nurtures and noise that misleads. Catherine Coulomb emphasizes that this is not a rigid or mechanical process. Discernment is more like a conversation, a delicate back and forth that requires patience, self-compassion, and trust in our capacity to learn from experience. Each choice, each reflection becomes a reference point, refining our ability to hear the quiet wisdom within. Silence is a critical ally in this process. The mind's noise can be relentless, but by creating intentional pauses, through stillness, meditation, or mindful reflection, we give the subtle voice the space it needs to emerge. In these quiet moments, we begin to notice patterns that might otherwise be invisible, the nudges that come at the right moment, the clarity that follows contemplation, the gentle insistence that persists despite distractions. Discernment requires this kind of attentive listening, a willingness to stay present long enough for insight to surface and to resist the temptation to force clarity where it has not yet arrived. Catherine Coulomb reminds us that discernment also involves emotional awareness. Our feelings are powerful indicators of what is authentic and what is not. Anxiety, restlessness, or a sense of obligation may signal that we are responding to external pressures rather than inner guidance. Conversely, a quiet confidence, a sense of ease, or a gentle inner knowing often accompanies true guidance. By paying attention to these emotional cues, we can navigate the delicate space between intuition and noise with increasing accuracy. This is not about perfection. It is about developing sensitivity, patience, and trust in our own capacity to distinguish truth from distraction. Ultimately, discerning guidance from noise is about cultivating intimacy with oneself. It is the practice of listening attentively, reflecting honestly, and responding wisely. The small voice is patient. It will not be silenced by confusion or hesitation. It waits for our presence, our awareness, and our willingness to engage with it carefully. Catherine Coombe emphasizes that as we hone this discernment, we step more fully into a life guided by insight rather than impulse, by clarity rather than chaos, and by the quiet wisdom that is always present, if only we take the time to listen. Do you want me to expand key point 5 next in the same flowing, emotionally compelling style to continue building the full speech? Here's key point 5% expanded into a 600-word seamless segment in the Esther Perel inspired style. Hearing the still small voice is only the beginning. True transformation occurs when we allow the guidance we receive to shape our actions, our choices, and the trajectory of our lives. It is one thing to notice the whisper, to feel its presence, and another to integrate its wisdom into the fabric of daily living. Many of us fall into the trap of appreciating insight but failing to act on it, keeping the voice as a distant companion rather than a guiding force. Catherine Coombe reminds us that the measure of divine listening is not in awareness alone, but in its capacity to influence how we show up in the world. Action, in this context, is not about hasty decisions or impulsive leaps. It is about aligning our behaviors, intentions, and commitments with the subtle nudges that arise within us. The whisper may suggest small adjustments, a conversation we've been avoiding, a boundary we need to honor, a creative impulse we've neglected. Or it may challenge us to embrace significant change, to step into discomfort, or to pursue a path that feels uncertain yet profoundly resonant. Acting on these insights requires courage, discernment, and trust in the unseen. It is the delicate art of translating intuition into meaningful choices, letting the quiet wisdom of the inner voice guide tangible steps forward. Catherine Coombe emphasizes that integration is a process, not an event. It begins with small, deliberate actions that reinforce our connection to the guidance we have received. Over time, these small acts accumulate, forming a pattern of alignment between our inner life and our external reality. When we consistently honor the whisper, we cultivate a rhythm in which life begins to respond in kind. Opportunities, relationships, and experiences start to align with the subtle intelligence we are learning to trust. What once felt like sporadic nudges becomes a coherent stream of insight, guiding us with increasing clarity toward fulfillment and purpose. This integration also demands patience. The inner voice operates on its own timing, often slower than our desire for immediate results. Acting too quickly can distort the guidance, while waiting too long can lead to doubt or inaction. Catherine Coombe reminds us that discernment and responsiveness must coexist. We must learn to recognize when a prompt requires immediate attention and when it calls for reflection, trusting that the timing of the whisper is deliberate. Each choice we make in alignment with this guidance strengthens our confidence and our connection, reinforcing the delicate dialogue between intuition and action. Another critical aspect of integrating insight is self-compassion. Acting on subtle guidance often brings vulnerability. Change can expose us to uncertainty, challenge our assumptions, and invite risk. It is natural to question ourselves, to wonder if we are misinterpreting the voice or misjudging the situation. Yet, these moments are part of the learning process. By responding with kindness to ourselves, we maintain the openness required to continue hearing and following the whisper. Catherine Coombe highlights that compassion does not dilute responsibility. Rather, it nurtures the trust and courage necessary for sustained alignment between our inner guidance and our external lives. Finally, integrating the still small voice is about connection. Connection to ourselves, to the world, and to the divine intelligence that moves through all things. Each action taken in accordance with intuition reinforces our capacity to live authentically, to honor our values, and to cultivate a life of coherence and meaning. The voice we hear is not distant or abstract. It is alive within us, shaping the decisions, relationships, and paths we pursue. By letting it guide us in tangible ways, we transform insight into lived reality, and the whisper becomes a powerful agent of growth, healing, and transformation. Do you want me to expand key point 6 next in the same flowing, emotionally rich style to complete the full speech? Here's key point 6% expanded into a T600-word seamless segment in the Esther Perel inspired style. Sustaining a lifelong practice of listening to the still small voice is perhaps the most profound commitment one can make. It is not a single moment of clarity or a fleeting insight, but a continuous dialogue, a relationship cultivated over time with patience, dedication, and reverence. Life is ever-changing, filled with challenges, distractions, and unexpected turns, and yet the whisper is always present, waiting for our attention, inviting us to return again and again. Catherine Kuhlman reminds us that the journey of divine listening is not about achieving perfection in hearing or following the voice flawlessly, but about showing up consistently, nurturing the connection, and trusting that the guidance will unfold in its own time. To sustain this practice, we must create rituals that support attentiveness and reflection. These may take the form of quiet meditation, journaling, mindful walks, or moments of stillness at the beginning and end of each day. Such practices are not obligations, they are invitations to enter a state of receptivity, to make space for the inner dialogue that often goes unnoticed amidst the busyness of life. Over time, these small, intentional moments become a lifeline, a reminder that the whisper is not distant or inaccessible, but a constant companion whose guidance shapes our thoughts, decisions, and actions. Catherine Kuhlman emphasizes that sustaining this practice requires patience and self-compassion. There will be times when we miss the whisper, when we are too caught up in external demands to notice its presence, or when doubt clouds our ability to discern its guidance. These moments are not failures, they are natural parts of the journey. Each time we return, each time we pause and listen again, we reinforce the habit of tuning in to the quiet intelligence within. Gradually, the practice becomes less effortful and more integrated into the rhythm of daily life, until the still small voice is no longer something we seek, but something we live with, an ever-present guide in our hearts. Another crucial aspect of sustaining this practice is trust in the process itself. The whisper does not always offer immediate clarity or dramatic revelations. Often, its guidance is subtle, unfolding over time, shaping our path incrementally. Catherine Kuhlman reminds us that the divine voice works with patience, nudging us gently, waiting for us to align with its rhythm. By cultivating trust, we learn to embrace uncertainty, to respond with awareness rather than reaction, and to appreciate that transformation is rarely instantaneous. The long arc of listening teaches resilience, deepens intuition, and fosters a quiet confidence in our ability to navigate life's complexities. Sustaining a lifelong practice also requires reflection on how the guidance manifests in our lives. By observing the effects of following the whisper, how decisions unfold, how relationships deepen, how challenges resolve, we develop a stronger sense of discernment and clarity. Each observation reinforces our trust in the process and strengthens our capacity to recognize the voice in new situations. Catherine Kuhlman highlights that over time, this reflective practice cultivates wisdom. We not only hear the voice more clearly, but we begin to anticipate its guidance, respond with greater confidence, and live in alignment with our deepest values and intentions. Ultimately, sustaining the practice of listening to the still small voice is about relationship with ourselves, with life, and with the subtle intelligence that flows through all things. It is about showing up daily, paying attention, and responding with courage and compassion. Catherine Kuhlman reminds us that the whisper is not a fleeting visitor. It is a lifelong companion, guiding us gently, persistently, and faithfully through every season of life. The more we honor it, the more it shapes us, transforms us, and leads us into a life that is coherent, meaningful, and profoundly aligned with the truth of who we are. If you want, I can now combine all 6 key points into a full, seamless 4,000+ word motivational speech, Esther Perel style, with the opening hook and closing paragraph, fully ready for presentation or YouTube use. Do you want me to do that next?